These days, I spend a lot of time playing competitive games. Games like League, Overwatch, Street Fighter, stuff that makes me put a lot of brain power towards being good at a game and being better than everyone else who's playing it. And I enjoy those kind of games. I like knowing that I'm good at a video game comparatively to a bunch of other people, but sometimes it's nice to play a video game that reminds me why I enjoy playing video games in the first place. And that is exactly what Hyper Light Drifter did for me. So you start up the game and the story makes no fucking sense. There's like a light and an explosion, and then there's a lake, but the lake has blood in it. And then you see the drifter, which is actually what it's called, by the way. And then there's these big, scary robots, but they're actually dead. And then there's a dog, and they go through a door, and the drifter's like, oh, I gotta get the white thingy. But then the black goo's like, no, I'm gonna get you. He's like, no, I want the white thingy, though. No! And then the game starts. Huh. You know, I'm sure it would make sense if I looked it up on some wiki or something, but I'm not gonna do that shit. Like, do you think I put effort into these videos?
You serious?
One of the first things you'll notice about Hyper Light Drifter is that it looks amazing aesthetically. I adore a good sprite-based art style. Even if it is a little bit overused in today's industry, it always fascinates me how people can make all these worlds come to life using only a couple squares. The art direction for Hyper Light in particular is very bold and simple. It fits really well with the game's atmosphere, and I think it helps to emphasize some of the smaller details in the world, like the runes in the ruins, or the grass on the grass. The various character and enemy designs also look amazing too. The design of the Drifter in particular is one of my favorite designs in any video game ever. Like, you wanna know how to make a character cool, in my eyes? You give him a sick-ass article of clothing that bellows in the wind and a sword. That's so cool. All of these details wrap together to make this sort of cyberpunk fantasy world that I just love walking around in from time to time. I love it so much that it even inspired me to make this little picture, which isn't that good, but you know, it's a thing. Yeah. But people don't care about video games for all this artsy shit, so how exactly does the game play? Well, in Hyper Light Drifter, you play as the Drifter, obviously, and travel between 4 different areas, north, south, east, and eventually west, once you complete the other 3, killing enemies, and trying to find these little diamond things, and then you pull them up out of the ground, and you pull up 4 of them, and then you fight a boss, and then you kill it, and then you get a gun, and then you move on to the next one. Now, if you think that sounds simple, then you'd be correct. Hyper Light Drifter has a very simple concept, but it's the combat and the exploration that really make it worth your while. You see, the areas in Hyper Light Drifter are pretty big. Each area has a large number of dungeons and different little set pieces for you to explore, like one minute you'll be underground in some laboratory, and the next you'll be on top of a lake with a floating giant robot corpse, which looks sick, by the way. And all the while, you have to fight a large array of enemies that the game puts in your way. Which leads me right to my favorite part about the game, the combat system. The controls in Hyper Light Drifter are very simple. You get a basic slash that can be done 3 times consecutively, a dash that can be done 3 times consecutively, and a gun that charges up as you kill enemies and slash objects. Basically, how combat plays out is you'll enter a room, there'll be enemies, you dash around, cutting and shooting them down until you kill them all and move on to the next area. The part that's interesting about it is exactly how the enemies are designed. And oh god, do I love how the enemies are designed in this game. In most other action games, they always design some enemy that ruins your experience. Be it a enemy with an unbreakable shield, or who keeps teleporting around all over the place so you can never catch him. These kind of enemies are usually designed to make the game harder or to trick you into thinking that it's challenging, when in reality, they're just hindering your combat abilities and making the game less fun. It's stupid. Hyper Light Drifter doesn't do this. Every enemy has 1, maybe 2 attacks. They all either shoot a projectile, or do like a jump, or some sort of slash, and then you can identify that quickly and play around it. The best part about this is that it never makes any of the enemies less challenging because they're all presented in one room, and you have to find a way to deal with all of them at once without getting yourself killed. And trust me, they throw a lot of enemies at you in the later rooms in the game. And it's hard! It's really hard, you'll probably die a lot, but it never feels like it's artificial difficulty. It never feels like you died because of some bullshit. So then you respawn at the beginning of the room, you go back in there, you try again, maybe you die a few more times, but eventually you finally get all the mechanics. You finally understand what the enemies are doing, and you beat it. And sometimes in some of the tougher rooms after you beat them, the Drifter does this little animation where he's like, pink, and it looks so sweet, and it feels awesome. God, I love it. Also, you can upgrade your character using these little yellow squares that you find in crates all around the world or dropped by some enemies. Among these upgrades are things like more health packs, grenades, abilities that you use for combat. These upgrades are really useful and they can be very helpful in taking down enemies or traversing terrain. For example, you can unlock a slash dash that allows you to cut people and dash at the same time and does 2 damage instead of 1, and that's really useful. You can also unlock the multi-dash that allows you to dash almost indefinitely with well-timed button presses. And that unlocks one of the most annoying challenges in the game where you have to multi-dash around a room 100 times in a row without stopping or crashing into a wall, and it's so frickin' difficult because your brain starts to psych itself out and you can't dash properly. I seriously have like 30 minutes of me just trying to beat this stupid challenge, but I almost got it. Almost there. Come on. Come on.
Fucking bullshit!
You know, whenever I want to play a game like Ocarina of Time, for example, which is a masterpiece, by the way, I always have to sit down and go, okay, I'm gonna spend hours of my life to try and beat this game again, and I'm going to enjoy it before I can actually play Ocarina of Time. Because Ocarina of Time isn't the kind of game that you just beat in a matter of hours. No, you have to sit down and go, okay, I'm ready to experience this video game. And those kind of games can be great. I'd argue anyone on that point, but sometimes it's nice to play something that's a little bit more arcadey. Like a Mario game, for example. You just pick up the game, beat a couple levels, put it down, maybe come back a couple months later and do it again. And both of those kind of games can be a good time if they're made well. But I think the best part about Hyper Light Drifter for me is how it seems to combine both of those games. Hyper Light Drifter has a bizarre opening. It has a very vibrant and interesting world that makes you want to keep exploring it and learn more about the enemies and the areas. It's an experience. It has a simple yet complex combat system with very well made enemies. It has upgrades for you to unlock, it has areas for you to explore, it has bosses for you to kill. It's a game. One of my favorite things about Hyper Light Drifter is how you can play like halfway through an area, stop, and put the game down for a month, but when you come back, your objective is still the same. It's to just walk places, pull up the diamonds, kill the boss, leave. That never changes. And when you get down to it, you could beat the game in like 4 hours, but the second I first beat it and I was sitting there watching the credits with the music that you're listening to right now, the first thing I thought was, God damn, do I want to go play New Game Plus. Hyper Light Drifter is a short, well-knit experience that never stops feeling like a video game, and it's one of my favorite games that I've ever played. Now, if you'll excuse me, come on, there's no way I could possibly fail at this time, come on, yes! I did! Wait, there's more!